Hi, everyone. Um, let's get started. Before we start, just want to mention that we will have a Q&A for questions about this presentation after words for about 15 minutes. And throughout the presentation, if you need any technical assistance or just want to say hi while you're listening to the presentation, please put your questions on the chat. And then also, it'll be great if you could review this session. The link will be posted in the chat. We always love to hear from you about your feedback and what we could do better. So we'd really appreciate that as well. So with that, want to introduce ourselves. My name is Shomo Day. I'm the VP and Chief Architect for QuickBase. I've been with QuickBase since 2001 and started off as an engineer and been in various roles, and now lead the technology strategy and roadmap for QuickBase. Nikola, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my name is Nikola Tassev. I'm an engineer in the team that designs and implements QuickBase Pipelines product.
Awesome. So before we dive into the agenda, just a couple of things. First, while this presentation is mainly geared towards technical users, we will try to make it as accessible as possible to everybody. But certainly if there are terms and concepts that we use that you are not as familiar with, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to go into any details as possible afterwards. But what do want to make sure that it's clear that the content in this presentation is going to be geared towards the technical side. Secondly, about a year ago or so, we started looking at various technologies and companies around the automation and integrations area. And primarily because our customers, had made it clear what a valuable feature that is. You were using sometimes third-party tools. Certainly, you were using our automation service, and had made it really clear that that's something that we could offer in our product and make it a much more valuable experience for you. And so about 9 months back, we found this wonderful company in Bulgaria called Cloud Pipes. And I was part of the team that led the effort to acquire Cloud Pipes. And, I couldn't be happier with the result. Certainly the technology speaks for itself. It's one of our quickest growing features in our platform. But secondly, and more importantly, couldn't be happier with the talent and the expertise of the team itself. Just wonderful engineers and technologists, of which Nikola is one of them. And so we are extremely thrilled, and I'm extremely thrilled to bring to you pipelines as a product. And certainly what we are about to cover couldn't have been covered without that wonderful piece of technology that was added to the QuickBase platform. So with that, for this session, what we really want to cover is how we enable QuickBase to access your on-prem data. Next, we are going to give you a brief overview of the QuickBase pipelines for those of you who haven't had the time to have the chance to look at it. And then we are going to cover the on-prem agent architecture. That's the underpinnings that makes it possible for you to share your on-prem data. And then finally, we are going to go through the product demo. So before I go into this, this is not a feature that exists today. This is very much in our roadmap. So want to make sure that just from a legal standpoint, you realize that you don't want to make any decisions based upon content that's covered here. We certainly intend to make this possible, but roadmaps can change, as all of us know. Okay, so let's get to the heart of the problem. What are we trying to solve here? So as many of you know, that we live in a world where, and we realize that QuickBase is not the only application and platform that you'll be working with. Many of you have other platforms and applications that you work with, whether it's Salesforce and QuickBooks and Google Apps and DocuSign and Jira or what have you. And so you've had a need, many of you have had a need to move data back and forth, whether bringing data from all those cloud systems into QuickBase or moving data from QuickBase to those cloud systems. And we've obviously used various tools, sometimes third parties, sometimes our own properties like sync, sometimes our APIs. But whatever techniques you used, I think there are some very standard ways for you to bring those data and make those data go back and forth. And our latest offering, Pipeline, certainly makes it that much more easier for you to connect to all those systems. However, the reason you can do all of those things, and we can make it possible to do that, is because A, those systems are accessible over the public internet, and they all have APIs in some shape or form. But what do you do when your data is actually not accessible publicly? What happens when your data is accessible only behind the firewall? It's actually on-prem, and it's perhaps in an Oracle database, a SQL Server database, MongoDB, or even in some on-prem instance, like a Jira instance that you host on-prem and is not accessible publicly. How do you bring those data into QuickBase, or how do you move QuickBase data back into those systems? So that's the fundamental problem that we are trying to solve and make it easy for you to do so. So let's take a very specific example. So let's say that you are trying to build a QuickBase performance management app. And so on the left-hand side, this is something I think all of you will recognize. It's a fairly simple app. You have an employee table, you have some feedback tables, and you have some review tables. That's great. And you realize that, oh, great. So the data that I need to seed this app with are my employees in the employee table. However, you realize that the actual data of your employees is in a SQL Server database maintained by your IT perhaps, but it is on-prem, not accessible publicly. So that's the right-hand side. It's effectively a SQL Studio where we have a SQL database which has the employee table. And that employee table is maintained, it's up to date, it's real time, all of that good stuff. It's just behind the firewall. It's not accessible publicly. So how do you bring that data back into QuickBase? And potentially, maybe you even update certain status in QuickBase and you want to flow that data back into the employee table in SQL Server, just so that everything is up to date. How do you do that? So traditionally, the way that all of us have solved those problems is one of three ways. The easiest, but the more manual way has been to upload periodic snapshots of that data into QuickBase. So perhaps you or your IT partner gives you a download of the data from the employee table in a CSV format, perhaps, or in a spreadsheet, and you take that and maybe once a week or twice a week import it into QuickBase. That works, but it's not the best thing, right? Because A, it's manual, it's error prone, and it's not real time. A little bit better version of this is some semi-automated fashion in which the export of the data in SQL Server in CSV is hosted in some SFTP site that is actually accessible publicly. And perhaps you can use our sync product to take that and import it into QuickBase. That works as well, but again, remember, now you have the data in two different places, and again, it's not real time, and it is also unidirectional, right? You cannot take that data from QuickBase, update that, and move it back into SQL Server, not automatically anyway. And then the third one is using custom scripts and writing against the QuickBase APIs. And that's fine. That's a great use of our QuickBase APIs, and lots of people write very complex logic. That's what APIs are for. But it does mean that you have to host those scripts, you have to monitor it, you want to make sure that they don't go down, all of that. So there is certainly quite a bit of overhead that comes with writing that script, maintaining it, modifying it if your schema changes, and so on and so forth. So all of these solutions, while they achieve the end goal of bringing the data into QuickBase with some varying degrees, has some drawbacks. And so we are trying to make this much better. So the way that we are proposing to do this is that we have developed a piece of software that is part of the pipeline's infrastructure called the QuickBase On-Prem agent. And this is just a piece of computer software that is hosted by you within your IT infrastructure. And it can be hosted as a Windows, on Windows, or it can be hosted on Linux, or even on a Mac. And it works like any other service that you might think about. So on Windows, for example, it runs as a Windows service. But what this on-prem agent does is that it effectively mediates the communications between your on-prem data, let's say in this case, your SQL Server data, and our pipelines infrastructure, which sits in the QuickBase Cloud. And what this basically does is it makes it possible for you to access your on-prem data in a secure and reliable manner. And it is bidirectional, meaning that you can flow changes back into your SQL database. And it's a very simple piece of software. It is entirely under the control of your IT. But what this gives you is a generic framework so that if you want to hook up your Oracle database, or you want to hook up some other database, you just have to make some configuration changes, and then suddenly all of those databases as well are accessible to QuickBase. Notice, and we will get into the details here, that because this is completely under your control, you control what data is shared and is accessible publicly, and you control all of the permissions and the rights, and certainly you control how you host the agent. So that's what makes this really, really attractive, we think, to anybody trying to make it possible for their on-prem data to be shared externally. So before we get into the details of how this works, I wanted to share a little bit about what pipelines are and how they work for those of you who haven't had the opportunity yet to take a look at our pipelines feature. And I certainly encourage you, all of you, to do so, because as I mentioned at the top of this presentation, we are extremely excited about it. And we are finding that everybody who has been using it has just been thrilled, and they can't stop using more of it, which is exactly what we want. So, and then, so I want to make one thing clear, that we, although we acquired this as a company and as a different product, we've been working really hard to integrate it as part of the QuickBase platform. So today, pipelines is just another feature in the QuickBase platform. It's not a separate product. It is a feature just like any other feature in the QuickBase platform. And the way that it works is that on the left-hand side, you will see that this is your normal app creation process. You create QuickBase apps, you put in data, you run queries, you manage your people and your data with QuickBase apps. And what pipelines is really targeted towards are two things. One, writing complex business logic based upon events in QuickBase or in other systems. And second, it's to integrate with other systems. So you can do one or the other, but it's when you put both of them together, that's where the power of pipeline shines. So for example, you can, what do we mean by orchestrating workflow? Well, you can write very complex if-then logic, you can write loops and so on and so forth on data that is changing or that you want to bring in between different systems. And it could also be data that you want to move between QuickBase apps or between tables within QuickBase. And the integration part is really all of those different channels that we provide, really connectivity between with external third-party systems like QuickBooks, like Salesforce, like Workday, like DocuSign, and so on and so forth, that makes it possible for you to move data between whatever systems you want. And so when you go into pipelines, really there are a few concepts to understand. The first is the concept of a trigger, which should really be very familiar to all of you, because you use trigger in email notifications, certainly in automations, in webhooks, and so on and so forth. And basically a trigger is an event in QuickBase. And again, I must stress that this is not just restricted to QuickBase. It could be an event in another system that we provide a channel for. But taking QuickBase as an example, you can say, well, do something when a record is created. You can also actually create a pipeline which runs on some scheduled schedule, and you can say, well, let me just search for all the new records that were created in the last hour or so. Regardless, we consider this a trigger. And so trigger, once a pipeline is triggered, then you can write the orchestration logic, the workflow logic here. And so in this example, what we are doing is that we are taking the records that were created or searched for, and for each of them, we are doing something. And that doing something part is you can do a transform of those records. You can then write those records back to QuickBase, or you can write those records back to another third-party system like Salesforce or QuickBooks. So that's really what pipeline provides. And then the connectivity to all those different third-party systems, we use the term channels for that. So Salesforce is a channel, QuickBooks is a channel, and QuickBase also is a channel. So that's how pipelines work, and effectively, what we want is your on-prem data to be just another channel in this list of channels. So with that, I will hand it over to Nikola, who will talk about the architecture of the on-prem agent, and then go into the details of that, and also end with the demo, which is going to be really focused on how do you bring that employee table that I showed you at the top of the presentation into QuickBase. Nikola?
Yeah, thank you, Shlomo. I will share my screen now. So that I'll be showing you the presentation and the demo alongside. So the first step will be a kind of deeper dive into the system architecture of the on-premise agent. And I'll start with the initial requirements that we put in front of ourselves when we were designing the feature to begin with. So we wanted something that is simple to install, so that like maintenance and installation won't be trouble for IT departments and even for individuals. We wanted a solution that works on all major platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac, as a native application. We wanted it to connect only using outbound connections, so that traversing firewalls will be trivial and easy. And eventually we wanted it as a connectivity to allow multiplexing many data streams in a bidirectional way, because that is the communication need which is mandated by the pipelines product in order to access data bidirectionally. So having these requirements, we came up with a solution, and we are open about the architecture of this solution. Because presumably the IT department and the people who are deploying it are interested in the way how it works, the protocols used, the security that it implies. So this will be a bit more technical slide, but you will see in the forthcoming demo part how easy it is in practice. So here on the top left, we have the QuickBase pipelines engine, and this part of the QuickBase product. We have the pipelines engine that normally talks to HTTP-based APIs. And with the on-premise agent, we want to bring this to the on-premise data and also to protocols and libraries like ODBC, which are not HTTP-based. So that's why we introduced this agent server component that works on our end in the backend, and introduced the agent client that you will be able to see on the demo as well. And this solution implements a data path, which is shown here with the green lines, that actually show how your data is traveling. So here in between, you have the public internet and your corporate firewall. And the agent client uses two protocols to communicate with our servers. One is the standard HTTPS, which is used to acquire initial configuration and setup. And the particular tunneling of data uses the Curve ZMQ protocol, which is part of the popular 0MQ networking library, which we based our communication layer on. The other part of the technology actually consists of a chain, what we call a chain of HTTP proxies. So pretty much the pipelines engine uses a proxy configuration to connect to one proxy in the agent server, which in turn talks to the tunnel server and the tunnel client that actually implement the encrypted Curve ZMQ connection. And at the agent client side, there is another HTTP proxy server baked in that actually makes the final request to the on-premise service. And we came up with this architecture so that we can access both HTTP-based on-premise services. So imagine that you have an on-premise Jira instance that is not exposed to the internet, or Redmine bug tracker system, or any other service-oriented type of service that speaks HTTP. So this allows pipelines to talk to such services. And we also have this bridge plugin architecture in the client that allows us to add different bridge plugins. And the ODBC bridge plugin that you see in action in the forthcoming demo is one of these. And it allows connectivity to any database that has the standard ODBC driver. So data travels bidirectionally over the green path shown here, and this allows the pipelines engine to make requests to this data, and also potentially to be triggered on data changes on the on-premise data. So now I'll show the simpler part, the demo, which will cover the installation and setup of the on-premise agent, the connection of pipelines to the ODBC database using the ODBC channel, and actually two pipelines that implement the use case that Shomo mentioned in the beginning, showing bidirectional communication between the QuickBase app and your on-premise SQL Server database. So that's the pieces that we have. We have the QuickBase application, we have the on-premise agent in between, and the Microsoft SQL Server database. Now, that's the familiar dashboard of the QuickBase app. And we have the employees table here, which is still empty. We need to import the employees from the on-premise database. How are we going to do this? So here I have opened the pipelines dashboard, which is the first screen that people see when they use the pipelines offering. This is the place where the pipelines are listed, the available pipelines in the given account. And here I have defined the two pipelines that will do the bidirectional communication in this demo. But before we can run them, we need to configure and enable the on-premise agent. So here on the preferences page, there is a dedicated section to the agent that allows you to get the needed configuration parameters. And actually, these configuration parameters are just a URL and an API token that allow you to connect the agent to the corresponding QuickBase account. So now I'm going to switch to a virtual machine, a Windows virtual machine, which represents the on-premise database. And here I have the binary of the agent client. Here for the demo purposes, I'll be showing you the GUI version of the agent client. However, in a real production environment, this will be running as a Windows service. Still, it is a simple executable file, a native Windows executable file that doesn't require any specific additional installation steps. And now I'm going to get the URL and the API token. And when I click start, actually the agent performs the initial handshake and gets the initial configuration that allows it to then connect the encrypted curve 0MQ protocol. For this encryption, we generate public-private key pairs for the curve ZMQ for both on the client side and on the server side. So there is a mutual authentication of these of both sides, and they're generated on each session. So now, given that the agent is started and running, if I refresh this page, here we show the status of the currently running agent with some diagnostic information. And this means that our tunnel to the on-premise data is up and running, and we can now use it to run pipelines over it. The next step is to connect the ODBC channel in the pipelines. And in order to do so, I need to provide the standard ODBC connection string, which I have here for this database. So usually the connection string points to the database. Also, it might contain authentication information like the database user and password, but here know that we are using the trusted connection parameter, which means that you don't even need to expose the local database user and password to pipelines, because this connection string is actually executed and evaluated by the agent client on the actual database server. So we are using the Windows security context in order to access the database, which is one step ahead in terms of security. So now I'm going to open the first pipeline and provide this connection information to the ODBC channel. So since the ODBC channel is not connected, that's why it presents me with this connect dialog. And here I'm clicking also this proxy connection checkbox, which means that this channel will be using the on-premise agent in order to do communication. So when the channel is connected, then the pipes in the pipeline become available, and I need to configure the search pipe, which actually implements a search on the on-premise data. Here I need to specify the table. Here is the table employees that is coming from the SQL server. And know that when it is selected, we actually dynamically fetch the schema of this table, and all the fields that are defined in there become available in the pipeline designer so that they can be referenced down the line. The next steps in this pipeline actually prepare a bulk insert operation into QuickBase, meaning that they specify the table in QuickBase, the application and the table where we'll be doing the import. They specify the fields, and then they iterate over the data from the SQL Server database, and they put it into the QuickBase app. So one typical thing that often can happen is that there can be a slight difference between the schemas of the on-premise database and the QuickBase application. So in this case, pretty much we see that here we have the employee name is in a single field, and on the QuickBase side, we have this in two separate fields. And this is easy to handle with the pipelines offering, because here you have the ability to provide formulas and manipulate data and actually define a data mapping between the different channels. Here in this example, the two channels are the ODBC and the QuickBase channel. And here actually we're taking the employee name field and we split it by a space, and we take the first part as a first name and the second part as a second name, as the last name. So this language here, this formula language is called Jinja. It is a subset of Python and actually is capable of far more powerful data transformations. And it is one of the key benefits of using pipelines, that it actually allows you to manipulate the data while you are transferring it across the systems. So the next fields are direct mappings. And here in the loop, we are importing the data. We are preparing this bulk import, and as a final step, we are committing the import into QuickBase. So now this pipeline is ready to run, and I'll actually show you the full data on the on-premise database. So here we have 100 records, 100 employees of sample data. And now running this pipeline will transfer these records into the QuickBase app. So here we have a detailed report, progress report of the execution of the pipeline. So here we have the 100 records being fetched in pages. Currently, there is just one page, so we fetch them in one go. And then we prepare the bulk upsert and we start adding the data. And for pipeline design and troubleshooting purposes, you are able to see here the actual data which is being passed around from the ODBC pipes to the QuickBase pipes. So now with this pipeline, we are doing the initial synchronization. So we are importing the data from the SQL server to the QuickBase, and here it goes, the pipeline completed. So now if I come here and refresh this page, we'll be able to see the 100 employees imported into QuickBase. And as you can see, the names are correctly split in the separate columns in QuickBase. Now, the next step is to actually show how we can keep this data in sync, because now that you have it in QuickBase, you might want to do some updates here, to do some corrections, and to propagate these into the origin database. So that is done by the second pipeline that takes the other direction. So we need to configure it with the ODBC channel connection as well. That is the account that we just connected. And by the way, here you can actually connect to different databases. You are not limited to a single database. You can actually have pipelines that operate on different on-premise databases. So this pipeline begins with a record updated trigger that looks for updates in QuickBase on the employees table and checks for updates on the salary and social security number field. And whenever these get updated, this pipeline is executed. And as a second step, executes an SQL query. So the ODBC channel is capable of executing arbitrary SQL queries. And here we are running a standard update query that takes the data from the QuickBase table, the record that is updated, and updates it onto the destination database server. And here we're using the standard syntax of parameters into the SQL query, so you don't need to worry about SQL injections and like similar type of problems, because we use actually the ODBC driver to do the interpolation of the values into the SQL query. So having this pipeline configured, I can turn it on, and I'll now pick a sample employee here by their email, and I will actually filter here by this email so that we can see the particular data for this record as they are currently here. So we can see that the salary begins with a 7 and the social security begins with a 1. And I'm going to change these digits into the QuickBase record and show how these changes update propagate. So let's say that this salary becomes bigger and the social security number had an error. So we want to correct this from the interface of QuickBase. And now that I update this record here in QuickBase, the pipeline detects this updated record, and executes the SQL query. So now if I go back to the SQL server and refresh here, we can see that the salary and the social security number got updated for this particular record. So that shows the big potential of the on-premise agent and pipelines as a solution, because they actually are capable of keeping your data up to date bidirectionally. Also, we're planning to expand the features of the on-premise agent. As you saw on the architecture, that we have pluggable bridges. So we are able to support other native protocols like LDAP, like Active Directory, or like on-premise file systems and Windows shares. Again, we'll be glad to get your reviews about this session. And we are here to answer your questions after this demo. Thanks for watching.